Okay, so I'm Baz Kuti. I'm president of Modak US. Here with me today is Levi Bailey, associate vice president of cloud architecture at Humana. And I'm a great honor and great pleasure to introduce Levi and Humana and the work they're doing on digital health and digital platforms for their organization and their partners going forward. So over to you, Levi.
Thanks, Baz. I appreciate it. Yeah, I lead the teams at Humana that does that kind of is responsible to moving us forward from an interoperability perspective as we're kind of trying to transform health insurance as an industry within the U.S. A little bit of background about Humana I think is relevant to contextualize around the problem and what we're trying to solve and the purpose that we kind of align to on a daily basis. For the longest time, Humana has really focused or been an insurance company. And the history of insurance and the health insurance and health application in the U.S. has really been kind of a partnership between providers and health insurers. However, that partnership has strictly been or more aligned to a financial transaction-based solution, meaning that it was fee for service. When a provider would do a service, they charge the health insurers or, made a claim to health insurers, and then we pay that claim based upon the cost that has been assigned or the reimbursement assigned to that particular service. Over time, and in the last 5 years, we've seen really a pivot in the way that we consider how health insurance and how health as a whole within the U.S. can be managed and kind of transitioned to be more cost effective and create better results. The reality is that, I think everyone knows health costs have been on the rise for years and years and years. Humana sees that as a problem, and in particular in our market, when we look at Medicare and Medicaid, which is our primary market, we do have regular, group insurance and other insurance options and products, but our primary insurance market is really the Medicare market, elderly population. And that has a governmental component to it, obviously. It's sponsored by the U.S. government. And when we look at the rising cost and the services being able to be offered, it's just not sustainable in the direction the U.S. was going. And I think there's a demand by the market to see change and to see improvements in outcomes as well as cost in relation to what you can expect with health insurance and health in general, just your health journey. Right. The way that we look to do that is first changing from a fee-for-service mentality, which is, that basic transactional mentality, to more of a value-based market. Meaning, I want to allow providers to get more money when they produce better outcomes, right? Because again, it's a public market. That's the way it works in the U.S. We're not, or a private market. We're not really a public market where, the government just said, this is what you get, and this is what we're going to pay providers, and then you just offer providers. Now, I think there are benefits and negatives to both market types in the sense that within a public market, you have less choices, less options. You're kind of assigned what you want. In a private market, it's opened up to the world, so anybody can create a provider network or whatever they need, and it's all about what what clientele they can attribute to or get to kind of work with them. With a value-based repayment system, it doesn't encourage just doing services to get funds to pay for your things. It encourages the providers to come to outcomes. Basically, the better outcomes that you achieve, the more we reimburse you in what you do. So it's all based upon the patient and based upon seeing that the patient's best interests are kept in mind. Now, when we think of that as an overall strategy, the insurance and the provider integrations had to change. And we had to start thinking more about how do we put the patient at the front of everything that we do, in particular in the way that we consider how we can assist in creating those better outcomes. And what we saw as an opportunity for Humana as a strategic objective was really to say, hey, we've been in health insurance for a very long time, but we don't want to be a health insurer. What we want to be is we want to be a health company with elements of insurance. Okay. So we used to be an insurance company with elements of health. We would do some things from a clinical perspective, but now we are pivoting or have pivoted to a health company with elements of insurance.
That's an interesting transformation journey you're going through. And obviously interoperability is a key part of that journey. So how have you approached this interoperability in your ecosystem today? And what do you think it's going to be, in a few years' time from now?
Yeah, and so first, I think contextualizing the discussion around what we've done there and why interoperability is important. We have a lot of rich data. In the end, claims still come through us. So all that clinical data and EHRs and stuff across the network of providers comes through your payer, ecosystem. And so we feel that interoperability, and where interoperability really plays a role, is the ability to share that data across the different participants to impact that journey as far as how your health outcome will be impacted. Right. So when we look at it, it's going to be baby steps initially. We started the journey, right? We've created, really, there's a couple of different factors that led us to this point where it's really the right time to make this transition in the healthcare ecosystem. One of the things that we did early on when evaluating our approach on how we were going to tackle interoperability and its place within the market was to do, some joint studies with different groups. And one of the joint studies that was done was with, I believe it was the University of Pittsburgh, if I remember correctly. But I'm not, don't quote me on the location or who did it with us, but I do remember the outcomes or the output from that study. So I think that's a place to start with sharing on it.
Yeah.
They did an assessment of waste in healthcare, because really driving cost in healthcare is about how much waste is in healthcare. Like if we have a lot of waste, that accounts for a lot of the expenditure, and therefore if you can limit the waste, you limit the cost. Yeah. And when we looked at it, we attributed almost $900 billion of waste in the U.S. healthcare system. Of that $900 billion of waste, over a third of it was directly related to interoperability, the lack of interoperability. The fact that data was not shared across the efficient way to where it could actually eliminate the need for waste to occur within the healthcare system. For instance, I go to one doctor, I get an MRI or whatever, I get some tests done, and then I go to another doctor and they don't have it and they issue the same test, and then you go get that test again. Like things like that, you think about it, those are a lack of interoperability, the ability to share data across them that leads to redundant services being offered, wastefulness to occur.
Okay.
So when we looked at the market, that driving factor of cost escalation, the fact that people were not happy with the experience, the customer-driven approach. When you think about it, we live in a world of Netflix, of Hulu, of on-demand services, things where we as a consumer expect to be able to get what we want when we want it, right? That is the world we live in. Facebook, like the digital age. The reality is the healthcare market was not digital. It was not even designed to be digital at this point. You don't have access to your data. Others don't have access to your data. You can't create a personalized experience for an individual. That's not the way it was designed. In order to get better outcomes, really healthcare needs to be personalized because it's a personal journey. Everybody's healthcare is different. It's not a ubiquitous thing. It's not global to everyone. Right. As you look at that, that's where competitors started, innovators started coming into the market. Things like the whole Hathaway, Berkshire, and Amazon initiative to change healthcare, right? That was fun because people were not happy.
Yeah.
They didn't want that anymore. They saw an opportunity to disrupt the market. And the reality is, for us as an established vendor in the health industry, we are in a prime position to be the primary disruptor because we understand what the journey has to look like to go from A to B. We know what it is and we know what it could be. And we know what it's going to take to make that journey happen for us to be able to achieve the goals of having a digital experience and a truly personalized experience with healthcare.
And so we looked at interoperability. If we put the patient first mindset and then we put the systems and the integration to enable that personal medicine or personal healthcare to be possible, required a significant amount of interoperability to be put in place. And then the second area was really the cost opportunity. You said 900 billion, which is a huge number. And then a third of that related to interoperability. And so the justification is there to do it. And the third aspect in your journey around interoperability was really that if we didn't do disruption ourselves, if we didn't disrupt ourselves, then really we could be disrupted by others.
So somebody will disrupt us. You said that the business case is there. I would say the mandate is there to make it change. Like it's beyond that. Like we have to stop escalation of costs. We have to improve outcomes. I mean, if you look at the U.S. healthcare or U.S. population, I think for a first world country, we may have the lowest expected survival or lifespan of the majority of first world countries out there. And some would argue, well, that's directly related to the healthcare system. I think there are multiple factors, obviously. I think U.S. has some of the best healthcare in the world, too. There are certain services and innovations that you can get in the private market that you don't see in other places. The investments are there, things like that allow for health to actually be, improved through those innovations and research. You just look at the whole COVID situation and the amount of investments and change to get something to market as fast as we can. I think it was directly enabled because of a private market and the ability for drug companies to take advantage of that. However, having said all that, you have to understand that costs can't just continue to rise. And the other factors in the way that we live and decisions we make have to come into play as far as our health. But that is a direct implication to how advantageous we take advantage of the healthcare that is here. If costs are expensive, people put off going to the doctor, doing different things, getting procedures done. There's a lot of implications that go on there, right? So when we look at it from that perspective, there becomes a mandate to make a change, to be disrupted, or it's just not sustainable.
Yeah, it's a mandate for change, and rather than a justification on a business case. And you make an excellent point there. So as you look at this, building this ecosystem out and building the interoperability out, in terms of your Humana's strategy, you can walk us through kind of the journey you've been on to date, and what are the key sort of tenets within that journey of building this out?
Yeah, so I think the first place to start is to consider, what approach do you take in supporting interoperability, not just for ourselves as Humana, but for the ecosystem? Because in the end, interoperability is only as impactful as the places where it's applied, right? It's not an internal thing. It's not a Humana service that we just look at from an internal perspective. It's got to participate in a greater ecosystem. It has to include providers. It has to include consumer-based applications, Apple Health, all of these other services that are now, people have an expectation to be able to control and integrate with all of their life, right? Whether it be what you watch on TV or what you stream, to what your health is and what your health means to you, right? So, Fitbit, you think of all the different new devices and stuff around managing your health. Well, it's just going to go beyond that. It's going to get into, I want to be able to manage my, prescriptions and my lab results and all these things. I want to be able to see that. I want to have access to that. I want to be able to share that with others to basically improve my journey. So when you think of it from that perspective, we had to consider, well, how do we create something that is designed around the ecosystem as opposed to Humana? And the way we did that is first is take an approach of saying it needs to be platform-based, meaning it can't be siloed to a business unit. It has to be a global thing that allows us to plug and play and continue to adapt to as interoperability opportunities evolve. So that was one thing that we had to do is first settle on it should be a platform approach to how we look at solving the problem. Right. And then two, when we're developing a platform, you just talked about how did we think about it or what are the concerns? And we talked about how it has to be an ecosystem approach, meaning it has to be payer agnostic. Be just strictly for Humana's purpose. When we think about it, it has to be customer focused, which means the members and the consumers and the patients, right? Those are the people that are important to make sure that we're serving. Therefore, the opportunity we have when we look at it is we have to be able to support it in a payer agnostic fashion. So the resources and the ways that we create those interoperability opportunities has to not just be, for years and years, when you think about it, I talked about the financial nature of the health insurer to provider relationship. That put the insurer in the direct position of dictating how somebody got paid, meaning you're going to send me my ID. And if you don't send me my ID with this data in this format, in this way, I'm not going to reimburse you. Well, we're no longer, it's not financial anymore. It's clinical now. It's about changing the point of care, being able to influence the health outcomes.
Right.
With that in mind, it has to be putting the patient first, meaning I don't want to put barriers to that being able to occur. And in order to do that, I got to remove the artificial requirements around how I am able to identify and provide the right data at the right time at the point of care in order to lead to the better outcome. So I have to be care agnostic.
Bringing it contextually to the situation you're in is a significant challenge in what you're doing. And so the kind of this, as you say, the data platform, looking at it enterprise-wide rather than siloed in a functional perspective is a journey Humana took, which is an ambitious journey. It is a significant change to take on. And so if you look at that, sort of what I would call a massive data fabric, if you want to call it that, which you're building out, which is agile, has got the flexibility in it, so it can adapt to new changes which occur, and have the patient at the forefront of it. You know, what kind of building blocks did you architecturally put into place, and sort of ecosystems did you think about from a partner network? Did you think about?
Sure. So 2 points to that. One, you mentioned, and we were kind of talking about just the platform approach. Well, the reality is there are 2 platforms that we looked at building. One really supports and enables the other. The first platform that we're looking at really was around focused on the interoperability interfaces, meaning part of what helped interoperability start taking leaps forward and is put us on this journey is the industry standards by which that have been developed in recent years that really are starting to take hold all the way through to provider-based systems and EHRs and EMRs and things like that allow us to interrupt the point of care within workflow as opposed to an agnostic system that sits outside of it that basically creates disruption in the application of that data within that transaction or within that interface with the consumer. So that was the first thing. And the first platform that we focused on was about supporting that industry standard in a scalable way that allows us to interface with something called FHIR standard. That's exactly what it is. And so that is that API standard that creates a set of common resources that we can work with across healthcare. And then there are additional applications around the Da Vinci project and others, and including Smart on FHIR, which allows us to build smart apps that directly integrate with the provider-based systems in workflow. So the provider is like they're using their system and they're just interacting with our data, and we can guide an experience to improve the health journey for the individual. So that's the first aspect to it. But underlying all that, and this is maybe more relevant to what you were asking and kind of talking through and leading up to how we approach enabling that from a Humana perspective. We have, a rich set of data. The insurers, that's the one thing we have that nobody else has when we look at disruptors in the market. And we also look at just in general. We are a central point to your interactions with providers. Therefore, your historical view of data as it comes through the claims, the diagnosis codes, the pharmaceuticals, all of that stuff flows through the payer. And as such, we have a rich set of data that can be used to improve your outcomes and your journey. And so the first thing to do when you look at a company that's been in business for over 50 years and grew up maybe not with digital transformation or digital experience in mind, that data is not necessarily easily accessed or available at an enterprise scale. It is more localized to the platform or the usage that it was originally intended for. And so when we consider how do we enable that interoperability journey, the first thing we have to do is we have to liberate and democratize our data internally to be able to support that. And that's where the data fabric concept comes in. And this is not a new concept. It's not like we invented this out of nowhere. This is an industry concept. If you look at a company like Stitch Fix, did a white paper on it. They enabled all their analytics through doing a data fabric approach. I believe you all actually have some experiences, and part of why we and we do partner with you all to do some of the work that we do You took a similar approach with a company called GSK, I believe, where, pharmaceutical company, where they decided that the way to be able to do holistic analytics and kind of see that full picture and be able to create those insights and affect some outcome was to centralize or have a way to create a central hub by which data is exchanged or made available, so that you have that holistic view into the overall data across a large multi input or multi-application based company that has tons of different systems that have grown up over time, that have similar data but don't have relationships directly between them in the way that they work. So when we consider that, the first thing we have to do is make that data available. And that is where a data fabric comes in as a concept. Now, in order to enable that, you have to have partners, you have to have technology to be able to create that scalability and the ability to share that data in a holistic fashion. And so when I talked about platform and us being a health company, we're not a technology company. We have technologists, we have a technology arm, but in the end, we're really a health company first and foremost. We think, our business cases are driven by our health journey and what we're trying to do there and our insurance products. So when we look at that, we have to make partnerships and have technology partners that help us orchestrate and build experiences leveraging those capabilities.
That's good. Great.
And we partnered with a couple companies to do that. One of them being, Modak was, we use you all for a product called Naboo, and Fireshot. And what Naboo and Fireshot does is really accelerate our ability to create reusable pipelines, automate the ability to bring that data together and create the data fabric kind of basis for that liberation of data and making it available. And then in addition to that, in order to do any of this, we made a stance early on that we needed to be a cloud-based solution, that we needed a cloud-based solution because it has to be scalable. Like in the end, we moved outside of a localized solution for something to a global, larger ecosystem-based solution where the demands on accessing and using that data, or the ability to access and use that data, again, obviously we put, everybody's data protection at the center of everything we do, or required, or else we couldn't sell insurance or work with health data. So obviously, you have consent rights and all those things embedded within this experience that's being created. But in order to do that, we know that the vision is to have, tons of data being able to be exchanged to improve that journey. And in order to do that effectively, we need to have a scalable infrastructure that can support the demands. And the only way to do that is to build and leverage the power of cloud-based technologies that basically, for all intents and purposes, give you infinite scalability. So we partner
your
with
uniqueness there, really. The uniqueness what you did there was really around, from what I understand, is really you took an approach of a hybrid cloud, which is unique, because in what I see out there in the industry. And so why a hybrid cloud, and what was the sort of drivers behind that?
So we do have some partnerships with Microsoft and Azure. I think that's probably been publicized. I believe it was even announced on LinkedIn. And we have a large contingent of the work that we do happening in Azure as an organization, in particular around our digital health and analytics organization, which is generating the insights and doing the modeling and some of the BI-based solutions that we feed through data with the data fabric, right? But that's the interface or the reusable pipelines to make sure that they have the latest data across the organization to generate those insights. And there's a large workload there. But when we started this journey, we made an intention that as a company, we cannot narrow in and limit ourselves to one vendor to basically support our needs. We have to go with what the technology is that's available at the time that we think is going to best serve our members and the overall journey that we're trying to create. So with that, we do allow at Humana, and we have taken the approach of saying we're a multi-cloud organization from a fundamental perspective, although we do create strategic partnerships to basically say, how can we be cost optimal as we're making this journey? So if you look at our Microsoft engagement there, part of that was saying, all right, we're going to make them maybe our preferred cloud vendor for most use cases, but when things come about where we see an opportunity, and we even have some. There's a offshoot of Humana called Author by Humana, which is a newer health insurance option designed around completely changing the way health insurance is managed. You have a personal health coach. You don't worry about everything's approved. It's just a simplistic experience, but it's designed for a certain type of individual with certain health needs in mind. And that they built that entire experience, an entire journey, which is really around a differentiated experience for the member in GCP in Google, because they found that they had some technologies there that align to them. So when we look at our overall company, we are making those decisions strategically. And as a data fabric, we had to say, well, if we know we're going to be supporting some of our company that's over in GCP, some of them in Azure, some of them potentially in AWS, we have to be a multi-cloud solution. Our platform can't be singular to one cloud. It needs to be able to scale across the cloud and see it as one big offering. It also gives us the ability to create resiliency, redundancy, because we know it's unlikely, but it does happen. Sometimes regions go down. Even whole cloud providers have issues with things. If I can have the option to jump back over to another one, given that, that makes sure I can offer the level of service that I want. So I can really offer the full reliability across the vendors of cloud.
Back to that interoperability, you're also thinking about interoperability across clouds, and then giving that resiliency and capability and agility, because they're all innovating at different speeds, and different capabilities and strengths. And so you can leverage that capabilities from the cloud providers. And if I look at the two platform plays in terms of Stanzas and FHIR and making data available, and then also the data fabric side of things, bringing those two together on a multi-cloud platform is what really Humana has done. And companies like Modak have accelerated that ability to basically build what we call the pipelines, essentially, around bringing all that data together, and giving that insight faster, so that you can make that objective of making the single point of the patient, first strategy, realistic, in what you're doing. So it kind of, because if I'm, let's say I'm another client and I'm another healthcare company, I'm another CDO somewhere, or head of cloud or something, and I'm trying this journey. What are the things I should look out for? What are the kind of pitfalls? What shouldn't I do? What should I do? And I love the way, some things I'm learning where you've built these teams like the Mavericks, the culture of building things together with multi-ecosystem partners all working together to a common goal. So some of the things which you've done which have helped, and sort of things you shouldn't do really, or avoid if you can. If you share your experiences there.
A couple things to consider, and I'll go to the teaming question that you had there and how we approach this. One thing we did, we talked about how we decided a platform approach or a centralized kind of platform in order to support our both data fabric and interoperability journey was a key contributor to how we approach the problem. In order to do that, and again, we talked about being consumer-centric. When we talked about our consumers being able to have access to their data and affect the health journey, it was all about experience, driving an individualized, personalized experience, and being able to support that. And it doesn't just stop there. When we thought about how do we support people, the teams that will make that capable, because again, we are a platform, just like Facebook's a platform, but what makes up Facebook is the posts, is the pages that people deploy on it, is the things that they use the platform for, right? That's the
content contribution.
That's the content, content, that view, right, is really a distributed process. It's not one team doing it because you're going to be limited. To create content, it's really distributing it is where the power starts to really take shape and kind of form. So when we looked at that, we said, well, that means from our platform's perspective, we need to look at it as a product, and we need to think of it from a consumer point of view. And our consumer is not only the patient that's doing it, it's the application teams, the third parties, the providers, whoever else that is using the platform to create that content, to basically create that experience, and to kind of influence the overall trajectory of what we're trying to do.
Correct.
So to do that, we took a very, we kind of redefined the way that we work as an organization and the way that we approach our planning, our life cycle, the evolution of the platform. And we did that through a product-driven approach, meaning, okay, we're not going to treat this as a project. This is not a project where we're going to run it, we're going to build it, we're going to define it up front, we're going to, have a scope, and we're going to say we're going to go do this, and this is what it's going to cost, and we're done. What we did is we said, we're going to do it in an agile product methodology, which allows us to have a 5-year vision. We said we know what we want the platform to be or the platforms to be. However, we know that if I try to plan all that up front and I try to outline the scope and I try to define a budget for it, what will end up happening is during that 5-year journey, we're going to deviate somewhere. And when we deviate, we're going to far off course. And it's going to be really hard to adjust back to course. Within a product methodology, we do more of a quarterly planning, and we allow our feedback loops to influence where the product trend actually goes and where the platform goes, instead of trying to define that strategy completely up front. We have a directionary vision, but the strategy from how we execute on it and the things that we build is informed through constant feedback loops that then provide input for a quarterly planning exercise that allows us to continually readjust to center, move ourselves back to center and make sure that we're delivering the thing that we intended that will meet the needs of the vision that we have in the long run in that 5-year kind of view. So that's one thing that I think has helped us along in this journey to a large extent. Not that it's easy. There are challenges to that. I think it's a cultural shift for a lot of people. It's a cultural shift that funding for us has been a really challenging aspect to that, because our methodology was based upon at Humana from an accounting methodology, was really driven from a project-based kind of thought process. Because of that, when you're trying to move to this product thing, you say, well, I don't know exactly what I'm going to deliver next year. I know there are some epics, or here's our roadmap or proposed roadmap of where we're going, but I don't know what I'm going to deliver until we actually do the planning and kind of work out the details and understand what the investment needs to be to deliver that thing. And we'll allow you to prioritize that. That conversation and the funding exercise and the way that we do funding for us as an organization has been a very challenging aspect to what we're doing. So for any organization doing this, I think you have to understand some of your legacy processes or processes that you've established to operate your business may be in conflict with the approach you take to deliver on the value you're trying to deliver. So that's one aspect that I would say, both a positive and then a challenge in regards to that if you're talking about the way we work. Secondarily, I think it's important for people to think about in relation to this is consider what the vision is that you're delivering on, and what is going to be required for you to do that. So if we're talking in particular, and I can relay this to any industry, I don't think it's specific or unique to my industry. But when we think about a data fabric or making data, democratizing data, liberating data, and then leveraging that data to create or differentiate an experience, I think you have to reconsider the way you do data integration when you think about data integration. We do data integration in 2 ways. We still have batch-based data integration. Again, a pipeline may be run in a periodic cycle, a daily cycle, whatever, depending upon the source of data and the frequency of change. But I think where things really start becoming more powerful and where we're starting to really take strides and momentum is to move more to an event-based, architecture, something that allows for the data to drive the experience. And the way the data drives the experience and the only way I can really do that is by having that data available in near real time to drive that experience, or else it doesn't really.
And this again goes back to the context. That event-driven data is contextual to the patient.
Yeah, and for us, it's highly important, right? We talked about impacting the point of care. I can't impact the point of care if I'm working with stale data. It has to be fresh data, or else there's a limit to how much I can impact the point of care. Whereas in other industries, it may vary, but I think you'll find in many industries, if you really want to create a differentiated experience, you've got to change your methodology for how data is integrated across the organization and really drive towards a near real-time approach. Our approach to doing that has been using Confluent Kafka and Kafka as a technology to really drive towards an event-driven enterprise. So the ability to stream data in near real time and do that at scale, and then consider, how do we start creating and moving away from just talking about the nouns of business, which is really those data subjects and the data sets that you have, and start also talking about the actions that cause the data to change. So I refer to that as the verbs of data. That is the thing that I think is starting to kind of change what the power that you can unlock within digital transformation at an organization is to start considering, reevaluating data integration and thinking about other ways by which your organization can move closer and closer to, prescriptive analytics, right? Prescriptive analytics would say it's near real time. I'm getting inputs, and as I get those inputs, that allows me to generate an insight. And so if you think about that totality, that means data really has to be freely moving across the organization.
If you just think about it as a kind of what I would summarize as kind of a TikTok approach. Yeah, you got that batch feeds which are occurring on a TOC frequency, and then you got that sort of real-time event-driven approach and a tick mentality, and both those things have to work together in the context again of what the operator or the user is providing. And then the other thing you're saying is it's double-sided. Really, you're providing data to the consumer, but also the consumer is providing content back, and it's the richness of their feedback into the platform. And so it's a double-sided mechanism of each improving the quality of the data back to that outcome you're looking for and the experience for the patient.
Yeah, and I think that's what you just mentioned is definitely key when we think about it. And we talked about it with teams, but that's really oftentimes what you find is things that work in other areas really influence, it is influential across the board. And so when you talked about that feedback loop concept, it's true with this too. If you don't have the feedback of the use and those things coming in, you can never, react quickly to creating that individualized experience. So, it's important to understand what happened at that moment to allow you to react to and adjust that. And you see it in analytics and the AI all over the time, right? The only way to create a good AI experience is to have that constant feedback loop, right? Continually feeding it new data so that you can adjust the experience and improve the experience. It's only as smart as the data that you feed it. So you have to make sure you're caring for it in order for it to be responsive. So I think when you think about a data fabric and what you're trying to do there, that's really what you need to consider is, what is your end goal? What is your vision for what your data fabric is gonna support? And I think if you're moving towards a fully digital transformation, something that is personalized, contextualized, and experience-driven architecture, you need to consider what are the different flows of data necessary to support that, and how do I create that interaction in near real-time kind of integrations.
Great. That's perfect. The patient in the loop, as I'm summarizing in this journey here. So this kind of wrapping up here in terms of COVID. COVID's had a huge impact on healthcare and all our lives and worldwide. If you look at kind of the sort of immediate things which have happened and companies have reacted to that, but more, what do you think the long-term impact of to companies like Humana and the healthcare sector are, and what do you think the changes will occur in sort of a more long-term perspective because of COVID?
I think there's a couple things, and if we talk companies first, what does it force industries at large to do? Depending upon your industry and depending upon the maturity or the outside influences, each organization has been on their own journey towards digital transformation or not. We don't see need to. Our industry works the way it does. It's fine. I think things like COVID that really changed the way that we live our lives. It made us work from home, work remotely, expect a rich digital experience if I'm going to be able to even get something done or live my life, I think has definitely pushed a number of companies to make investments and accelerate a digital transformation journey. So if anything positive maybe came out of what the evolution is that we can expect across the board in our lives and the way that we integrate, is it's forced industries that maybe didn't fill the mandate to improve that side of what they do. It forced them to reevaluate and accelerate their journey there to help support that. I think that fundamentally is something that a situation like that can do. The other thing, I mean, from a business perspective as well, I think it made you reconsider, your investments and how you can differentiate the experience that you can offer, given the fact that you're limited in what you can do. And I think there's been a lot of innovative things that have come out of that, right? Even just a different way of looking at it. I think one of the more interesting ones has been virtual conferencing, and really virtual conferences at industry level. We've really pushed the boundaries on what you can expect out of that. And that's a pretty cool thing when I look at just, the expectations or the possibilities moving forward for an organization to disseminate data and information across industries and technology. So I think that also helps as well. It gives more people the opportunity to attend and learn and get those things. So there's a pretty cool, segue into how we had to change our lives, but, we made a positive out of something that was completely negative.
That's a great point. I think it's accelerated digital. I think everybody's reassessing the boardrooms and the executives of these world, looking at how can I take advantage of digital for the future. And it's assessed our working relationships in terms of remote working, and it's driven innovation. It's driven innovation of things we wouldn't have thought about before, and another spike in innovation activities around remote working and telehealth and so on, and the interaction with our patients and the experience they have. So I think you've kind of the key points in where I have. So just to let's just summarize our conversation today, and for the audience out there, appreciate all your thoughts here and your lessons, Levi. It's been a great chat, and what I'll take away, the kind of key takeaways. I see Humana as really a trendsetter who's setting the path for others to adopt. The digital ambition you have in terms of your multi-sided platform is just great to see. And the way you've approached it is just fantastic. And the value of data, value of data being the fuel for analytics is data. Okay. And if you can harvest that data, govern that data, mine that data, whatever the words you want to go use, then you've got a fantastic opportunity to unlock value from that data. And Humana is on that journey, and for others to go and see whether the hybrid cloud approach is unique. I mean, it is really cool to see that, because it gives you optionality. It really gives you optionality. Many companies are not thinking that. Okay. And so to have that optionality in your pocket as to which way we may go, it's just it's great to see and consider in terms of Humana's strategy here. So just to summarize some of the key things we've talked about, and your lessons and sharing your experience at Humana. Thank you, Levi, very much today. Please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Thank you very much today.